I do want to feel positive about myself though one day. Like, alright, you did it.
Now stay strong.
Nothing's wrong with you. You're okay to walk this earth. You're not a bad person. You're not someone who's fucking it up. I'm just curious on the man that I'm gonna become.
In the world of hip-hop, fame is rarely permanent. It comes fast, it burns bright, and for most, it fades. But there are exceptions. Artists who defy logic. Figures who draw both obsession and resistance. NBA YoungBoy is one of those exceptions. Kentrell Deshaun Gaulden, known to the world as YoungBoy, never broke again. Emerged from the streets of Baton Rouge as a teenager with a haunting voice and a relentless drive. His music carried pain, paranoia, and power. By the time he was 21, he wasn't just another rapper. He was one of the most streamed artists on earth. Yet, despite his dominance in numbers, there was silence where recognition should have been. No Grammy nods, no invitations to the big award shows, no red carpets or late-night TV spots. For every million streams, there was a closed door. For every new fan, there was another reason the industry turned its back. To many, it seemed like the world had blackballed him. And real quick, before we dive deeper into this story, if you're enjoying this breakdown, make sure to hit that subscribe button. It helps the channel grow and keeps us bringing you more stories like this one. Now, back to YoungBoy, but to his fans, the loyal millions who call themselves YB's Army. He was untouchable. Numbers spoke louder than gatekeepers. Even without mainstream backing, he stood shoulder to shoulder with the giants of his generation. Drake, Kendrick, Cole. And then, just as his star seemed untouchable, everything stopped. Arrests, courtrooms, house arrest, a life trapped inside the walls of his own mansion. For years, YoungBoy's voice echoed through phones and speakers, but his presence on stage, the place where legends are made, vanished. Until now, January 2022, NBA YoungBoy's mixtape Colors stormed the charts. For weeks, it sat near the top, defying the traditional rollout. No radio push, no industry machine, no award show campaign. Just YoungBoy and the army behind him. But then, almost overnight, Colors disappeared from Apple Music's main charts. The project that was on its way to #1 vanished. YoungBoy took to Instagram with a cryptic message. His words were sharp, direct, and dangerous. It wasn't just a complaint, it was an accusation. A declaration of war against one of the biggest record labels in the world. And for many, it explained everything. Why was the most streamed rapper in America never invited to the Grammys? Why did BET, Billboard, and the VMAs leave his name off their stages? Why was one of the most prolific hitmakers of his era left in the shadows, while others basked in the spotlight? The idea of a blackball wasn't new in hip-hop. History is filled with artists who spoke too loudly, acted too defiantly, and suddenly found themselves cut off. But in YoungBoy's case, the proof seemed to live in plain sight. Millions of fans streamed him daily, yet his name was rarely mentioned by the industry's gatekeepers. Even as he outsold some of the biggest names in rap, the doors of mainstream recognition remained locked. And then there were the beefs. YoungBoy was no stranger to conflict. From Baton Rouge rivalries to high-profile feuds with some of the biggest artists in hip-hop, controversy followed him like a shadow. His tense history with Lil Durk spilled into one of rap's most public feuds, with lines drawn between fan bases, affiliates, and even other stars who chose sides. There were words exchanged with Boozy, an idol-turned-critic. There were subtle shots from established artists who dismissed him as reckless. And beyond the music, there was the cloud of his reputation, arrests, trials, house arrest, and a constant hum of violence surrounding his name. But to his fans, this only strengthened the theory. They didn't see a reckless star spiraling. They saw an artist silence because he refused to play by the rules. A young man too raw, too unpolished, and too independent for the industry machine. A comment from one fan said it all. He doesn't get invited to major awards. No industry push. No industry support. Us YB fans are what's keeping him in the forefront where he deserves to be. Others argued differently. Labels protect their artists. He burned bridges. Once he fell out with them, it seems like they stopped having his back. Whatever the truth, one thing was clear. NBA YoungBoy was operating on the outside. And with every diss, every accusation, and every feud, the distance between him and the mainstream only grew wider. But isolation has a way of sharpening focus. And for YoungBoy, every door that shut seemed to push him closer to his fans, the one force the industry couldn't control. They streamed his music until the charts couldn't ignore him. They turned his releases into viral moments. They spread his name, his slang, his story across every corner of social media. If the industry had blackballed him, his fans were the crowbar breaking the lock. And as the walls of the music business closed tighter, YoungBoy's defiance only grew louder. For NBA YoungBoy, the music industry wasn't his only battlefield. Beyond the stage, beyond the charts, there was another war, one fought in courtrooms against prosecutors, against time itself. In March of 2021, a federal warrant was issued for his arrest. Authorities claimed he'd been found in possession of illegal firearms, a violation that could cost him years behind bars. When the police closed in, YoungBoy didn't surrender quietly. A brief chase ended with him in custody, his career hanging by a thread. For months, uncertainty clouded his future. He was released on strict house arrest, confined to his Utah mansion, his freedom reduced to a perimeter of walls and locked gates. It was here, in isolation, that YoungBoy's legend only grew. Cut off from the outside world, he released project after project, recording from inside his home. He painted his face with eerie black makeup, called himself a rock star, and posted cryptic messages that blurred the line between rebellion and confession. To his supporters, it was proof that no cage could silence him. To his critics, it was another chapter of chaos. But to YoungBoy himself, it was survival. In 2024, the verdict came down. He was sentenced to 23 months in federal prison for weapon possession, with additional fines and probation waiting on the other side. For many, it felt like the final chapter. But in May 2025, everything changed. With the stroke of a pen, President Donald Trump granted YoungBoy a full pardon. In an instant, his probation was gone. His fines were erased. His restrictions lifted. The boy from Baton Rouge, who had spent years chained to courtrooms and house arrest, was free. The news sent shockwaves through the culture. Supporters celebrated, critics questioned, and the industry braced itself. Because freedom meant something bigger than music. It meant YoungBoy could move again, travel again, perform again. And almost immediately, whispers of a return grew louder. Before the tour came the project that sparked it all, the MASA album, Make America Slime Again. Released in 2025, it wasn't just another drop in his endless catalog. It was a statement, a rebellion wrapped in music, a reflection of years spent in silence, courtrooms, and confinement. The album pushed his defiance into overdrive. Raw, unpolished, and deeply confrontational, it felt like the sound of a man preparing for war. It was a middle finger to the industry, to his enemies, to the idea that he had been erased. And it set the stage for something bigger. The MASA Tour, his first ever headlining tour, his first shows in 5 years. A 27-city run that would stretch from Dallas to New Orleans, carrying with it all the weight of his exile and his redemption. Dallas, Houston, Atlanta, Chicago, New York, and finally, New Orleans. October 19th, a homecoming that promised both closure and resurrection. Opening acts like D-Baby, Tozi, Jaibo, K3, and Offset joined the lineup, proving that the tour wasn't only about YoungBoy. It was about the culture he had inspired. Tickets dropped. Within hours, prices soared. In Houston, resale tickets hit $6,000. Even the cheapest hovered near $100, and still, demand never slowed. By June, 13 new dates were added. San Diego, Las Vegas, Charlotte, Seattle, Oklahoma City, and in New Orleans, demand was so overwhelming that a second night was added. For YoungBoy, the support was overwhelming, but also personal. In a rare message, he challenged his fans directly. If you don't come to my tour, don't bum me no more. It wasn't arrogance. It was desperation. After years of silence, he wanted more than streams. He wanted faces in the crowd, loyalty proven in person. As the countdown to opening night began, anticipation reached a fever pitch. Fans speculated about the set list. Would he open with Outside Today? the anthem that cemented his rise? Or roar into the night with a newer track from MASA, proving his catalog hadn't just survived exile, it had expanded? Behind the scenes, rehearsals painted a different picture. This wasn't just a rapper stepping on stage. This was a man reclaiming his space. Pyrotechnics, stage design, lights crafted to amplify the chaos that defined him. And for the first time in years, the industry couldn't look away. Blogs, journalists, even mainstream outlets that once ignored him scrambled for coverage. The boy they'd blackballed was suddenly unavoidable. But beyond the headlines, beyond the speculation, one truth cut through. The MASA Tour isn't just about music. It is about survival. It is about defiance. And it is about showing the world that no matter how many doors closed, NBA YoungBoy still had the key, his fans. And when those arena lights dimmed and the crowd roared his name, it became clear this wasn't just a comeback. It was a revolution. In hip-hop, every era has its ghosts. Artists who soared, only to vanish. Names whispered in past tense, their stories unfinished. But NBA YoungBoy was never meant to be a ghost. From Baton Rouge trap houses to the top of the streaming charts, from isolation in Utah to a presidential pardon, his life has played out like a riddle the industry couldn't solve. For every scandal, there was a hit. For every setback, another surge of loyalty from his fans. They called him Blackballed. They called him reckless. They call him doomed. But in 2025, he walked back into the spotlight. Not as an industry favorite, not as a polished star, but as a survivor. The MASA Album and Tour proved something bigger. That the voices of millions can break through walls no label can build. That you can't erase an artist who refuses to be forgotten. Still, the questions remain. Was he truly blackballed? Or did he simply burn too many bridges? Were his beefs the symptom of an artist too raw for control? Or the consequence of choices that even fame couldn't shield? And perhaps the biggest question of all, what comes next? Because if history has shown anything, it's that NBA YoungBoy does not walk in straight lines. His path is unpredictable, chaotic, dangerous. One moment he's isolated in silence. The next he's commanding arenas packed with voices screaming his name. But one thing is certain. He is no longer the boy they tried to silence. He is the man who turned blackball into battle cry, who turned isolation into obsession, who turned absence into the loudest comeback of 2025. And as the MASA Tour rages across America, one truth echoes through every arena, every chant, every light in the dark. NBA YoungBoy is still here. And for now, that's enough to shake the world.